Um, I went to school I thought I wanted to be a reporter. I graduated from OU. The other class got the full scoop in terms of, I didn't grow up around here. I grew up in a suburb, a city outside of New York City, about an hour from New York City. Salute. But my family had family in this area, and my freshman year, I was at Miami University in Oxford. That was a mistake. Didn't fit. I knew I wanted to go to school for communications at the time, and really journalism, and it wasn't a fit for a lot of reasons, but really they didn't have a great program. But when I was, and so you all are seniors, I'll have this conversation. So again, I was coming from out of state, but I wanted to come here because I could get in-state residence in terms of college fees. You know, if you're from out of state, you pay several thousand more than someone from in-state, an in-state student. And so I knew, because I had a parent living here, my dad was here, I could get in-state residence in Ohio. And so when I was looking at schools, my father lived in Dayton at the time, and talking about what schools to go to, and he was like, "Oh, you can go to UD or Wright State." I was like, too close, not having it. You know, I knew better than that. But then, and then he said, "Oh, if you want to, you can go to OU if you want to party." Because Ohio University has this reputation of being a party school. And so I was like, "Oh, Dad, no, I don't want to party, I don't want to party." And that was wrong too. It's not the truth. No, so no. It's just like, no. And then, you know, Miami's a good school, and I'd gotten a scholarship to go to Miami, and I had my dad's approval already, and all the people in his office, you know, Miami was a great school. The fact that I got in, yada, yada, yada. So I went to Miami, and that was great. And hated it. It was horrible. It was a horrible fit for me. And also just kind of being in college was, you know, so that whole transition and learning that I didn't really study much in high school. I was smart. I had a good memory. I kicked information right back out. But that whole process of studying and sitting down and sitting with the books and going over stuff, like, and building up, not just cramming for a test at the last minute, but walking it down. I didn't have that skill, really. I hadn't developed that skill. And then now looking back, well, now we know about it, but back then, and this was in the 1900s, way old, I'm probably older than your parents. But I also, because I was diagnosed later, I had ADD or ADHD. And so that whole idea of being smart and being able to, but needing stimulation and all of that, that got in the way. I had to develop those, that sit down, pick up the book, read the book, no, sit down, you know, what to get up, sit down. So college was hard because because you jump in and it keeps going, and you can party if you want to. Ain't nobody telling you to go home. You know, there's no one telling you, making sure you're in your dorm room and all that stuff. So add all those things together, and the environment didn't make sense for me. Oxford and Miami is known for being a little bit more conservative, and at the time, it was said out loud, you know, especially from the students of color, Black students, yeah, it means something. If you graduate from Miami, everyone knows you went through the fire. I don't want to feel like I got beat up for 4 years, you know, and struggle. I'm not doing that. That doesn't make sense for me. It just wasn't a good fit. There are other people who graduated, Black people, whatever, who graduated and it was fine. It wasn't good. So I got really sick because I was holding in the fact that I didn't want to be there. My grades made it clear that I didn't want to be there, but I didn't know how to tell my dad because, you know, Dad was very pleased and happy that his daughter was going to Miami. And, but I had done some research, and Ohio University is where I needed to be. If I wanted to do journalism, if I wanted to, because Miami had a communications program that was like generic for everything. OU had a communications college with journalism, with advertising. They had it broken down, and so they were very specialized. So I had facts to tell my dad. I didn't do the research early on. I just heard, OU, party school, and I backed away from it. I could have combated, I could have saved myself a year of heartache and all of that had I really done my research and kind of pushed back on my dad. So when, I was real sick, like in the hospital sick and all of that stuff, and I was starting to get an ulcer, and my father was like, okay, what's really going on? Like, why? I don't want to be here. I want to go to Ohio University. He was like, done. Okay, done. Don't get sick and die just because you don't know how to use your words, ultimately. And so, transferred to Ohio University, and the rest is history. But no, so I studied, and again, I still thought I wanted to be a reporter, but I got there, and at the time I had long hair, short length hair, and somewhere in my college career, I cut it short. I'm always changing my hair, but I cut it short, and my advisor, which I appreciate, years later when I told him, he was like, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. I was like, nah, you didn't say it was bad, you just pointed out a fact that at that time there weren't very many, if any, black women on TV with short hair. Okay, copy that. I'm not into people telling me how I should look and to get the job done that I want to get done, and that's not a battle that I was interested in fighting. And on top of that, so that's the cosmetic reason, and then the whole idea, and as loud as upfront as I can be, I'm also, now that extrovert, introvert, also kind of like the lay back and the cut, and that whole idea of being able to having to talk to people usually on their worst day, because news, sometimes it's good stuff and all that, but oftentimes it's the crime, it's the bad thing that happened. And then I'm supposed to go talk to someone and ask them how they feel, or tell me how you feel, and I don't have that in me. That's a lot, and you have to kind of have some level of kind of nerves of steel to walk up on people and all that. And I was just like, that's not my jam, that's not my thing. And I thought I was going to do radio for a while because I'm okay with talking. I was doing radio at the college station. And then, but I also fell into producing. And in my first job at WDT in Dayton, Ohio, after I graduated from school, I got to do all the jobs, editing, not shooting, but editing and writing and what we call sitting the assignment desk. That's listening to police scanners and all of that. And at the time we called it Chiron operating or CG, putting in the lower third so we could identifiers of people's names and all of that, doing that for newscasts. And so I did all of that, and then I ended up learning how to produce newscasts. And from there, I worked at a cable station back in New York for a little bit until then I did that. But then I came back here. I was working in Dayton, and then I came here to Cincinnati and did the first newscast on Channel 19, WXIX. It looks very different than what it did then, but this Channel 19 had been there forever, but they didn't have news, and I was a part of the team that did it. I did their first 10 o'clock newscast. We did a 10 and a midnight, and that was fun. That was where Fox as a station, as a channel was new, as a network, was new at the time, and it was just really known for The Simpsons. And we used to have a thing called, they call it dumb criminal stories, and I came up because I was allowed to be more creative than your average newscast, so I kind of dug that. But the stupid criminal stories you hear, I called it the dope of the day, because Homer's always, so we had this whole open, was like, dope, and here's the dope of the day, and so we tell the story, blah, 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 and then hit the sound effect. So that was here in Cincinnati, and then the same company that owned Channel 19 here owned the station, the sister station in Cleveland, Channel 19 WOIO. This was XIX, that was OIO. And I went there to, my boss and I went to that station to start their newscast, so I was a part of startups, that whole idea of taking zero and hiring the people and getting the idea of the format and what's the tone, and did that in Cleveland. And then I went to Chicago and did WGN Morning News, the morning show. And that morning show had been there. It was an hour long, but now we were moving to 2 hours, so I was a part of that, producing that for a 2 hour show. That was tough, because it's the #1 show. I ended up, well, let me go back. So that, then from there went to Boston to do a startup in Boston, a startup morning show in Boston. And then I got out of the business for a little bit, took care of my grandparents. I was married, was one kid and one on the way, and I wanted to step away from the business for a bit. When 9/11 happened in New York, I was in New York. It was in my hometown, which is again about an hour and 20 away. But I was glad I wasn't in the business. Like, if the world is coming to an end, I want to be with my family. I do not want to be running toward the station, which is what news people do. Again, we're not first responders. I don't want to disrespect first responders in that, but we are supposed to be there to tell you, the audience, what's going on. So there are so many of my colleagues, people who are still in the business, and they talk about when all that happened and you didn't know what was going on, especially in the big cities. You saw what was happening in New York, and then you saw what happened at the Pentagon, and then Pennsylvania. Cities were on lockdown. My friends in Chicago, they were like, we were at work for 3 days straight, because just doing constant coverage of what's happening and what's happening over here. And so from there, I was very pleased that I was 11 days from giving birth. My son was born on November 22nd. So I was very pleased that I wasn't in the business for my own ego and family's sake. And that helped me understand something. I was like, yeah, when the world's coming to an end, I'm gonna be at work. I'm gonna be with my family. But that whole thing of being a journalist is your life. People do journalism, you kind of are a journalist. That's who you are. The best ones, anyhow. You're, as they say, you're about that life. Like, you want to be there telling people the story. You want to be there. But I got back in the business, ended up being in Chicago again, and the show that I was producer on, I ended up becoming the executive producer on that. And that was fun. That was, again, the morning show. We had grown that show to be, hard news and interviews and then fun stuff. One of the best lines to me that summed it up in the hallway, because we had this big studio and we had bands and all that stuff. And one of the lines we actually said this was, "Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, there's an ostrich coming down the hall." And it's like the idea that you could be like telling the mayor, "Excuse me, there's an ostrich," and we're on a news show. That's the part that was odd, and I loved it, because it was like, yeah, that's life. You got your hard stuff, but then you also have your absurd, the silly stuff. So I thought that show, we did a really good job of mixing the fun and the hard and all of that. And we ended up being #1. It's still #1 in Chicago. From there, I went to Los Angeles and ran the newsroom out there. It was actually started as #2, and then the #1 left, and I did that for a little bit and decided I did not want to be in Los Angeles, did not like that, and accepted the job. It was my boss in Chicago who was like, "You're ready, you need to do more management stuff, go ahead and go to LA," it was the sister station of that, of the station in Chicago. And at the time, I was married to someone who was in the film industry, and when you talk about camera, he was a camera operator then, he's a director of photography now, and he runs the camera department on films and all of that. And so there were only a few places as a family I thought we could be, and so LA was one of them. And then when I got out there, I was like, wish I had more thumbs to give me a thumbs down. And there was some internal stuff that we get into the drama of working in companies and all that stuff, and we had new owners, and I was like, I'm not staying with this company. Y'all are liars. I see y'all doing stuff that's illegal, and I don't want to be a part of it and all that. I don't F around well, with dumb stuff. I don't do that well, and so I'm not gonna do that. And when I decided it was 2008, when I said I'm gonna leave and move back to Chicago, and I had that in my mind, and then I was in LA. I mean, we were on a KTLA, and it's on a lot. It's on a movie lot. I mean, it's on set, so it looks all Hollywood. You get that idea. You have to go up through the gate, and I had my name on a parking space, and there's a palm tree. I think I'm doing it right. Living really well. The money's nice. All of that. LA is weird, and I'm just like, but houses are easy. Like this little house, it's $1.5 million. Y'all are million, So, so all of that. So living the LA life for a little bit, and then when in my mind, I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna move back to Chicago because what had happened, I got the job in the middle of the school year, so I was commuting basically on the weekends. I'd come back home to Chicago, and then my husband and my dad were like helping with the kids, so it was all crazy anyhow. But now I'm getting down to the point where like, you're all moving out here or I'm coming back to Chicago. And then I was out there, and a guy was in my office, and we were talking, and then stuff started shaking. He was like, come here, stand in the doorway. It was an earthquake. I was like, I am so out of here, just that whole thing. But look, and things are moving. I look out at my car is rocking. Stuff is, I was like, oh, and then it was like a 4.5 or something. Everyone was like, oh, that was a small one. So, first of all, it's happening. I've never been in an earthquake before. I have felt a tremor or two, but we were rocking for a few seconds. And then you gotta jump into action, because now we gotta do news. So now it's like, okay, we gotta find crews, we gotta da-da-da-da-da. So you can't even, you're traumatized for a second, then it's like, back in it, and let's be about the business. And so, but in my mind, I was like, yeah, I'm so out of here. That's the universe saying, yup. And so I left, moved back to Chicago, and I started working with a community college and working with a media program, and hired me to produce a show and all that. And that's where I learned that I really liked working with others who wanted to be in the business, or the idea of that, of working with students. And so I went back to college at Ohio University, got to go get my master's so I could work at a college level. Yes. And so I'm getting there, so I'm bringing it up to speed. And so, so I'm in school at 40 years old at the time, 40 plus, a little bit older than that, trying to sit down and pay attention. And now remember, I got ADD. So, and I've been out of school for a long time. And so I'm sitting in class, I'm like, oh my God, but I tried meds and all that stuff. And, one of the things, as I told the other class, I always tell the story, like the first time the professor was Amy Edmondson, did you have any? Yeah, and she, one of her classes, and it was interesting and all that stuff, and she's like, okay, and so at the end of the semester, the first day, going over expectations and the syllabus and blah, 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 blah. I'm back in college, and she's like, at the end of the semester, you'll have a 15-page report, blah, 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 and I was like, 15 pages? I can give you a real good story in 15 seconds, because as a news person, you're writing quick and short stuff. It's like 15 pages, so that was a lot. Just that whole transitioning into just a new environment. It was more writing, just learn how to write academic style. I had been writing short sentences, 7 to 10 words, broadcast style. You write the 3 C's, clear, concise, and conversational. It has to be simple. Academic writing is not, might as well be Shakespeare, to me, in terms of all the words. I'm like, this sentence is a paragraph long. Yep. And then you need to restate what you did. I just said that. Nope, say it again. I was like, it was so anti what I had learned as a journalist. And a TV journalist, because newspaper journalists always say, y'all got it easy. Y'all can write and write and write and write. You're used to using a lot of words. TV was boom, boom, for the ear, because I can't hear it. I can't go back and read it. Like you read a newspaper, and you're like, what did that sentence say? And you can go back and read it. On TV or radio, it's gone. Once they've said it, now you can rewind, I guess. These days, you can rewind your TV. But for the most part, tight. tight sentences. So that's where. So now I'm at Ohio University as a graduate student. Then I graduated, and then I ended up working there, working with college students, which was my whole goal. So I feel really blessed that I worked towards something and it ended up happening. At the place where I didn't have to move again. That's where I met this one. You were at the high school journalism workshop, right?
I was, as a senior in high school.
Yep. And so
He's tall.
he's just a wee little lad. And Connor was one of those good eggs that wanted to do really well. He's that same disposition you have here, where he just wants everybody to do well, and you wants to tell a good story and all of that. That's who he was then. His work surprised me at how good it was. I mean, because you were working with us, didn't you? Did you leave for a year? I mean, did you just work with the Post or something?
I went to NBC for a year, so I was gone for junior year.
Yeah.
As I got later, as I had backed away a little bit, kind of came in, backed away. I was all over the place.
Yeah, he was doing a lot. But when he came back in, I think about your riverboat story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The regatta.
The regatta, yeah. So certain things, we kind of came back in surprised, like, okay, you've been doing the work, MMJ in terms of writing, shooting, editing, and writing good stories. So, his work was really good. He was also a knucklehead. So, there's that, but not a bad knucklehead. He's just like, what? Did you think that through? You didn't think that through. Okay, I'm gonna need you to think that through next time. So, but that's that age, So yeah, that's how I met Connor. And then I was there at OU for about 10 years, and then left. Pandemic made things, people. I wanted to be around people. Mm-hmm. I know. You see, never ask a woman her age.
I know, but like
I've been trying to track. Right now, it's around 50.
No sense. You're like 30.
Thank you. I'll take that. I'll take that. I just had a birthday at the end of July. I'm 54.
When you said that you were alive and doing a job during 9/11, I was like,
Yeah, isn't that crazy? The generation no more. That was alive.
Right.
I wasn't even there.
Yep.
So does that mean you're a Leo?
That means I'm a Leo. Yes.
Leo.
Oh,
I'm Leo too.
Leo, what's your birthday?
August.
Nice. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Are you Leo also?
No, I'm Scorpio.
Oh,
me too.
I just missed your son's birthday.
Yes.
Son, right? 22nd?
Yes.
He's not a Scorpio.
No, he's not a Scorpio. No, and then my oldest, So anyhow, I'm a Leo. Season opener. I'm the first day, July 23rd. So
I'm blessed.
Yeah. See. Yep. So in fact, today's my brother's birthday. Right, yours was yesterday, so I can make sure it's my brother. But been in the business for a minute. I'm thankful to my parents. Don't look my age. If I got up, you hear my knees, then it'll be clear. So I've been in the news business. I'm thankful enough to, once I graduated, came out of college in '89. I started working in the business in '89. I am a hard worker. When you're in school, no matter what it is, what you're doing, make sure you can do the practical work. Put your hands on. That's the one thing with media. You got to do it. You got to find a way to do it. You want to act in this? Find ways to act. You got to do it. Camera, writing, drawing, right? You can't say you like animating and not draw, right? Or you want to do animation and then not do animation. You got to do it, and it might look like crap, right? Whatever it is you're doing, it's going to be crappy at first. That's supposed to be, but you keep doing it. And keep doing it, and it gets better. And that's with anything. When someone asked me in the last class, what advice would I give? It was like, do the work. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that, because it's easier to sit in the bed and think about the work and, it's going to be this, and it's going to be that, and it's going to be whatever. Do it. And be okay with being a rookie, and be okay with doing it poorly. And hearing people, sometimes some people aren't coachable. I got a son who's not coachable, so it's like, yeah, but you don't know everything. So you have to be okay with someone telling you how to do something. I was speaking on myself. Where does he get it from? I don't like being told what to do. I I'm a Leo, we just established. I do not like being told what to do. So, but I also have to understand that I don't know everything. And so then it becomes how you're saying it, like, don't talk to me like I'm dumb. And you get older and you just be like, that's their problem, I'm trying to get the information. You're like, disrespect will never be tolerated. I'm never gonna tell you to allow yourself to be disrespected. How you handle that is a whole other thing. But as you are embarking, you are transitioning into this next phase of your life out of high school, you're gonna be learning new things, right? And people are gonna be trying to tell you things because you're gonna want things, and you gotta figure out how to get that information so you can do what it is you wanna do. So you gotta be coachable. You gotta be okay with being a rookie and doing it poorly, and then doing it better, and keep working at it to do it better. So what I'm doing now, so I moved back after OU, I moved back here to Cincinnati. At WCPO, title was content manager, which is basically executive producer. After running the newsrooms and doing all that, people are like, oh, you want to be an executive producer, meaning you have levels of management. Yes, I do not want to be responsible for everything and everybody. I just want to relax a little bit. And then after doing that for a little over a year, I was like, yeah, that's my time in the industry. And now I transitioned out of the newsroom and started working as a recruiter. Ended up being with Scripps, helping bring people into the industry, and really now kind of headhunting, just on a contract with them because I wanted to learn recruiting. So it's like, okay, how can I help? On the college end, I was pushing people into the industry. Now, how can I pull people in and try to keep people in the industry and help them move up to management? That's one of the things I realized I liked about my role as a manager. I think I've always been a leader. I've always been that person who wasn't afraid to say something and say it out loud, and say it loudly if I needed to. But I had to learn how to be a manager, and that is helping all the team, helping everybody to work together. Because a leader can say, just do it. That doesn't mean it's going to get done. That doesn't mean it's going to be done well. And that doesn't mean the team is going to necessarily want to do it. A manager is the person that understands how to bring the personalities together and make things happen. And I learned that as a producer. You need a lot of people to make your vision come to life. Your vision as a news producer is the newscast. So you need anchors, reporters, photographers, editors, engineers, camera people, director, all those to work together, and others to work together to make your vision for that newscast come to life. You put it all on paper, but on the screen, and write it up, and you put all the codes in, and I want over the shoulder screen, and I want a graphic, and I want all that. But other people have to actually do it. And so as a manager, so you're a leader of that newscast. But as a manager, it would behoove you to find ways to make sure there are buy-in and people want to do their best work. And do it for they should do it anyhow. You come to work, you came to do your best work. Well, things don't happen. You go to school, you're supposed to do your best work each day at school. Does it happen every day? Maybe not, because there's a lot of things in the way, right? So your teachers are trying to manage your personalities and trying to manage you and to get you into a place where you want to do your best work and all of that. So that was my role. So what I understood is that I liked that idea of creating the environment and the framework for people to do their best work. And so now this work that I've been doing as a recruiter or sourcer, that's the bringing in people for just got someone hired or got himself hired, but in West Palm Beach, so I'm excited about that. But I dig that. That's my contribution to the industry now. And now I also, people will hire me to help them get coverage for an event going on, or can you try to get us on news programs? And I know the language, so I'm like, oh, okay, you have this event. All right, can you make sure that you need a spokesperson and make sure it's visual, and I know how to talk to producers of different stations and see if get on the air and interview or get coverage for it. So that's some of what I'm doing now, and working on some other things, some other creative things that I have, that I wanted to do all my life, and now I'm doing that. Okay. Now, questions. Where are we at? Almost time.
Oh, no, we still got about 10:35, so we
Okay.
still have about a good solid 10 minutes-ish.
Oh, I talked about this.
Oh, remember you said your dad was in Ohio
Mm-hmm.
and you grew up in somewhere. Like,
In New York. Mm-hmm.
Did you grow up in New York or was you born in Ohio?
I was born in Kentucky, and I graduated from high school, Peekskill, New York. Let's get up here and show where it is. But every summer, my parents were divorced, so every summer and Christmas, I was here in Ohio. So I knew Dayton. My dad is from Covington, so I had ties to this area. So again, every divorced kid. So every summer and Christmas, I was on a plane, or my dad would come and drive and pick me up and bring me here. So yeah, I had a tight relationship all the way around. So this was like a second home. And now in New York, most of the family that I grew up with, they're all in the DMV. They're all in DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or Delaware. But I kind of made the Midwest and Ohio my home. This area. So between Chicago and Ohio, I had to admit it that when I was younger, I was like, I'm not from here, I'm from New York. But I'm from here too. I just didn't grow up in school here, which I know Cincinnati is that's very real. Where'd you go to school? And they mean high school, they don't mean college, right? So I have to say, I didn't grow here. I didn't grow up here. I have to make it clear. Someone told me, like, just say you went to Aiken. Just name different schools. People would be like, oh yeah, I remember you. Just pick a school. So I haven't tried that yet. But, yeah. What other questions?
So I'll like listen to you talk, and I like. Are you Jamaican?
No, you might be hearing the New York part.
Oh.
Yeah. Certain words, like when I say.
I heard some.
Yeah, water. I like hear they say water. Like I can't even do my mouth the way it feels like. Oh, I like water. But water. That New York part comes up.
Okay, good.
Water.
Well, I know. How do you say it? Like what? H2O. What is that?
It's water.
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 Yeah, water. So I say water.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna argue.
That's like WOR. I know it sounds like WORTR, right? Water. But y'all, when y'all say it, when I hear water, it feels like the mouth is open wide, which is a thing, right? And so being on TV and having an accent, and the whole idea in terms of news, and the whole idea is are to not have one. People should not necessarily know where you're from. You should be able to, which is odd because down south, people have draws. They have, they sound a certain way, but in school, your accents were advised and coached, and you had to practice losing that. And I think when I did some work on the air, I was a bit more conscious of the words I used and how, the big thing here back east, soda, here, pop. At least growing up, it was pop. So if I were doing stories about I would want to say they had a soda. I'm here in Ohio, I need to say they had a pop.
Yeah.
So you have to understand what's local and how that part of being able to fit in. You're not trying to fake it, but you're also trying to be relatable to your audience. So.
How do you say coffee?
Coffee. 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 How do you say it?
Black coffee.
Coffee.
Luckily, you didn't grow up in Boston. 'Cause
Right.
then you really have.
That would be another one. I lived in Boston for a little while, and and so I can't remember okay, I have a story. I have a family member who she's married into the family. She's from Boston, and there was some picture that we were saying we liked that was in her house, and it was from ALLPOPART. ALL, all, POP, pop, art. And she was saying, oh, I got it from Ah Pop Art. And we were like, what? She's like, Ah Pop Art. And we were like, Ah Pop Art. And we were like, oh my God. But yeah, that whole.
Have you felt like you've picked up some of the language when you've lived there? Like it becomes part of your dialect?
Certain things, and you want to, because I
Yeah.
want to be able to kind of
Feel like
again, be a part of the community and understand certain things, right? And so there are times like when I go and visit my family, who again now is all kind of in the Maryland area, but they're all the New York family, my brother and all my cousins that I grew up with, and they're like, man, you country, they can hear the Ohio or the Kentucky or the Athens in me, and sometimes I can hear it. Sometimes I hear certain words I say, and I'm like, well, dang, I don't know that word for a while, or it sounds twangy to me, or using y'all a bit more than you. Like in New York it would be you, but like in Chicago, certain words which I wanted to pick up. One of the things Chicago say, you want to come with, and not with me. You want to come with, and that's like a Chicago thing, and you goofy ass, it's your goofy ass. That's Chicago. There are certain things that are that we talk about mild sauce and all that stuff, but so definitely in the community, try to pick up and be a part of, because you want to be understood, right? You want to make sure that you're connecting, and you don't want to play a role, but at the same time, you're a bit of a chameleon. Other questions?
You basically already answered my question, honestly. But, what was your favorite thing about being in the newsroom?
Been in the newsroom. One of the things that I appreciate about journalism is it kind of keeps my ties to it and having in and out of it, because that whole idea of giving people a snapshot of their day, that whole idea of giving accurate information, that's a big thing for me. My mother and stepfather, which is a family of activists, and that whole idea of and so I think my form of activism was that whole idea of giving people accurate information. They can do what they want to do with the information, but that's one of the most powerful things you can give to someone is information. And so, and I used to always say you can educate someone. Like, no, people have to educate themselves. You can present information and they have to want to do it. You have to want to absorb it, right? And so that whole idea of accurate information about the world around them, that is the thing that keeps my kind of toe in the water with journalism and makes me want to find people that want to do this. Even though there's some days I do not turn on the news. Now that I'm not in it every day, I do not turn it on. It's a lot. It's a lot of information. I go home, I don't want to hear anything. I will sing, I will put on music, I'll put on, my whatever, sing, rap, whatever. But sometimes I don't want to hear that barrage of information, especially now where you can get information from everywhere and everywhere. You pick up, and so it's a lot. But that idea, and it burns me up. Like I see things on social media, like that's not true. Like I go and look it up, and I'm like, no. So media literacy is also a big thing. Like go and that's and people want to send me information. I'm like, you're killing me. This is not true. Just Google, find the original source. As a journalist, we have to have two methods of verification, independent sources of verification, before we can say something is a fact. And so, and that's not because because y'all were together. I got to get it from you, and I got to go back to the original source of the information, and then make sure that syncs up, and then I can say that, as we understand, and I have to say where my facts are coming from. I have to be transparent, and so that part is what I dig, is that digging. People know, and they know my triggers. A friend like, yo, you like researching? Can you such and such? I'm like, just put a battery in my back. It got me, I'm like digging out real information. But so that part is what keeps me kind of into it. But also, I have to shut down sometimes. I just want to be in my own world. I don't want to know what else is going on, because it's a lot.
Do you think the news outlets today are as into fact checking as maybe a few years back? And which makes it hard for the consumer to say, oh, well, they're saying this, they're saying
Right.
this.
I think local news is, I think what people get confused is national news and, or national programs that sound like news, but are really just opinions, people talking about things, and then things get turned. So I would say, yeah, there's that. I would say local news, yes, because there was that push, like you want to be first.
Right.
But being first and wrong, like they say, be loud and wrong. Ain't nobody want that, right? You want to be loud and wrong, or first and wrong, because that erodes trust, right? And so, so for local news, yes, that idea of, and I know I've been a part of it, like, no, where did we get that? Who said that? Like, well, no, it's a source of that. Okay, I know, and they might work for the police, but where did they get their information? You know, so that fact checking is there. Some stations are fast and loose still, some in town, some I used to work at years ago. Yeah, because you can see they're trying to make it right. But the other part of journalism is being okay to say I made a mistake and make it right. But yeah, national programs, and I think that whole idea of people not trusting the media and all of that is people. It's so easy to get confused on what is a fact and then what people think about a fact. And sometimes they're talked about in the same way, from the same desk, you know, and that's a problem.
So, Paul, do you think like some big businesses play a role in how stories, especially at the national level, are being broadcast and portrayed?
I know that can happen. I've never been a part of it, you know, but yeah, I know that can happen. I don't think it happens as much as people say it happens, and maybe on some channels it might, you know, but I know that in the bigger issues that have happened, like, we would do this. If there was a plane crash or something wrong with the plane, it didn't even have to be, let's say it was Delta. We would go through our commercial logs and the newscast. That was a part of our job also as a producer, and make sure there were no airplane commercials in the commercial log. Because that whole idea, even if it was like Southwest or something else, you just didn't want those things to be, those lines have gotten blurred, but you didn't want those things to connect. There was a time when sales could not be in a part of the newsroom. You didn't want that. But now, you know, as my part of my thesis a while ago was that's always been a part of it, right? Journalism started as a way for people to make money in magazines and ads and all that stuff. So journalism.
So it was important to have.
Yeah.
Be the first one with the story.
Yeah, and that right. And sometimes stories were made up, then it evolved, and that whole idea of objectivity and all of that evolved over the years. Oh no, she's an athletic nerd. We'll get into that. But yeah. Any other questions? I know it's all.
What kind of school do you? What kind of school, like what do you have to take in like college to go?
Right. So writing. So one of the things that I jumped over, but it's good for this question, is I like to write. You know, I said I like to talk. I like to be. I thought I wanted to be a reporter. But one of the things as a producer, you have to learn how to write. And you write in what we say, what's the 3 C's, and you'll get this. Will they be doing any broadcast writing, especially for broadcast? Clear, concise, and conversational. So those things, you have to learn how to write sentences that are directed to the point. Some kind of writing, like academic writing or creative writing, certain kinds of creative writing, because I'll say news writing is creative too in a certain kind of way. But you can use adjectives, and you're saying, oh, the flowery, or the great, or the, I don't know. You use words like I don't even use them much, because in news copy we're not supposed to be writing just facts, just information. Short sentences, 7 to 10 words in a sentence. That's the best writing, because unlike newspaper writing, newspaper, you're reading through, and you can read it. You can read it over if you choose to. News writing, or broadcast writing, radio, television writing, you say it, it's on. I mean, I guess these days, yes, you can rewind your television, but people are listening to me. They can't go back and listen again. Again, TV can't now anything, but the whole idea is making sure I say clear so it doesn't get confusing. Like that sentence I just made, now it's kind of confusing because now I'm hungry. But so writing journalism stories, learning how to write in broadcast news style. So that's what I learned. And so college or in or any secondary school, because I shouldn't say it. It's good to go to school after high school to learn extra. But if you get in somewhere and you are, it doesn't necessarily have to be 4 years. You have to learn the history of journalism, that's important. You have to understand how to research, that's one thing that journalists do, we research. And the big key thing in journalism in terms of news in journalism, because journalism comes in different ways, it can be marketing, it can be advertising, it can be public relations. But with news, it's the art, what we say, the art of verification. I can't just tell you, I just can't tell information because Valentina told me. I have to check it out. I have to make sure it's true. Because then if not, I'm just gossiping, right? So I have to make sure that, oh, he gave me a tip on a story. And then part of the journalist, it's 2 independent sources that also say the same thing. Where can I go and find this information myself as a journalist? And then tell that to people like, this is the facts as we know it. Facts do change. People are like, oh, facts don't change, the truth doesn't change. Facts change, because as we know more information, oh, this is different. Okay, you had a question.
What was your favorite thing about being a producer?
I like putting good question, that's a good question. I like putting the puzzle together. So producing is the thing that I mentioned, that you're understanding which stories are out there, how long they're going to be, what anchor is going to read those stories, what does it look like on the air, is it going to have graphics, is it going to be a video, is it going to have sound? I like the idea of pulling all of that together and then writing it and making it pop and making that happen. And so, and then I mentioned before, like that kind of control thing. I think producers, you want to say, producers are the smartest ones in the room because we have to think about the big picture. We have to think about how all these stories, I might have 3 reporters, or 4 reporters, or whatever. But again, remember, what did we get down to, 17 minutes of news? How do I make it? So we're not even talking about reporter stories. So say I have 3 reporters and 17 minutes of news, and those stories are 2 minutes apiece. How much time do I have for other stories now? 11 minutes. Now I gotta make those 11 minutes pop so that you could be excited about watching the show, thing that make people go, yeah, I wanna watch that again. I mean, not that show, but I wanna watch this station again. So that part of making it all come together and being in charge, and trying to get your vision out of your head onto a screen, a screen where everyone else can read it and understand it, and then the anchors read your words. See, people think the anchors, I don't know what people think in terms of what the anchors, I remember my dad saying, I didn't even know producers exist. You know, you think anchors are just saying these words from where? They're reading the teleprompter that includes words that the producer approved, or at least wrote, and if there's an executive producer, the executive producer made sure that it was all good. So that was one of the things, that whole idea of pulling it together. Yes, ma'am?
Do you see yourself doing this job for the rest of your life?
Oh, no. Actually, but so those skills transfer. That whole idea, so what I do see me doing, and what I do is pulling, so that I talked about it being like a puzzle, because you have all these different pieces and you gotta pull it together to make the big picture. That I do see. You know, that's what we do in different parts of our lives. But no, that whole idea of producing news, I can produce other things. And when I produced the film years ago, that was a different kind of coordinating and pulling things together and making calls and making sure people got paid and making sure that the crane was where it was supposed to be and blah, 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 blah. So that kind of coordinating, pulling things together, yeah, I dig that. But what I'll say in my old age is that whole idea of it's a rush. It's a rush, right? Breaking news happening, we gotta go to it. we're not first responders, no I don't wanna sound like I'm disrespecting anyone who's a first responder, but we're supposed to be on the scene. We're supposed to get that information out to you. We're supposed to be making calls and making sure things happen. So it's a heightened state of awareness. So you're like, get over that. So I let young legs handle that. But those skills, transferring, yes. Helping people who want to get in the business, yes. But as far as me and the daily, I promise, because I've been in and out of newsrooms, and I've been in newsrooms around the country, as I mentioned, I'm not getting back in. I just got out. I'm not getting back in. I promise. They're not going to pull me back in. I'll be back in next year. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, using those skills, and that's the one thing. You learning, any learning is that's the part. They can't take it away from you. I know how to do this and flip it. And the other thing, like producers, one thing that was fun, like producing in Chicago on the morning show, WGN Morning News, we had a helicopter that was doing traffic and all that. But then when there was like breaking news, when there was always breaking news in Chicago, especially in the morning. And you'll see a bit of it here when you go visit, you see the control room, that rush, something happened, and I'm like, we need this, we need that, blah, blah, blah. Like you see in the movies, that was dope, that was excellent, that was, yes. And then now it's like, man, that's a lot, So using the skills, absolutely. I'll let young ladies handle that. People whose heart are going, burst out of their chest now, that's what it feels like. What? Yes, sir.
What would you tell somebody new to video production?
Do the work. And that sounds simple, but you gotta do it. Media, like most things, but media is a practical sport. You have to do it. Can't talk about it. Somebody keep up Beyonce, you can't talk about it. You can't say what you're gonna do. You have to do it. Put your hands on the equipment. Figure it out. Practice it. So new to video production is just to not be afraid of the equipment. Treat it with respect. It's expensive equipment. And if you bust it, then you're messing it up for everyone else coming behind you. So once you start that process, treat it with respect. Make sure it doesn't get wet in the rain. Those kind of things. Make sure you don't just leave it laying on the floor so somebody can come and kick it. But do it. Like everything else. Do the work. Just do it. Practice it. Remember, you're not telling a story. I know in this day and age, I don't sound like an old lady, but in this day and age, when you're used to selfieing, and in video production, it can be about you. But I say the best stories are not, in terms of especially when you talk about news. There's a level of authenticity in terms of what stories you may be telling, visual arts and all of that stuff. And you do have to put some of yourself into it. But I'd say where that works in news, on the news side, and I'll speak on that, is understanding that you're telling stories about people and of people, and remembering that. Not just what happened to them, but kind of how they made them feel, because, and I'll go back to old school, but this is TV, right? It's just it's a thing. When you're clicking through, same with your phone, but when you're going through, you don't stop until you see something that you feel, that touches on. You might stop and you're like, oh, I touched. Oh. But that's fine. You don't need to see me and me. That was the other thing. I didn't want to be a reporter because I don't want people telling me how to look. You say I like to change my hair. And at the time, I had to cut my hair off back in college. I had to cut my hair off, and it was a little short, little flat cut. And somebody was like, there's not a lot of women. Again, this was a long time ago. There's not a lot of women, not a lot of black women on TV with short hair. You're not wrong. And I'm not gonna play that game. I had dreadlocks for like 10 years, all that. So that whole idea of now it's different. Now it's very different. But back in my day, it was a little bit more restrictive than it needed to be. And I didn't mind fighting the power. That's what I do. But I also was like, you can do a great story, it still happens today, and somebody will call in and say, I didn't like her dress, especially women. Women, we always get, scrutinized. People think they need to tell us what we're doing and wearing and all that stuff. I didn't like her dress, I didn't like her hair. She just told this fabulous story about blah, 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 blah. Y'all stuff, but I get it, I want it visual. You don't want to be a distraction This is why I go back to video production and telling stories. It's not about you, it's about the people you're telling the story about. So understanding that. Question. Yes, ma'am, that's what I'm saying. Say it again. I had to walk up. I want you to, you gotta say it louder. Okay, it's a little bit louder. Okay. A favorite part of my job. And that's the other thing, when y'all are talking, that's one thing, media workers and all that, we can be shy and low key, but project, make sure people hear you. You have something important to say, so make sure it's clear. The favorite part of my job, now that I'm helping put people on, help being a plug, that's the favorite part. Helping put people where they think they want to be, and watching them go ahead and shine. And that's what I always liked, that's what I understood I liked about when I was working at Connor at Ohio University. I liked working with college students, and students who wanted to be a part of something. Like, okay, you walk toward it, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you. Yeah, I see you working toward it. It's all the same, right? If your car breaks down and you're just sitting in the car, you're not gonna get as many people to help you as many as people who help you as if you are, that came out wrong. Not as many people are gonna stop to help you as many. Car breaks down, you're in the car, not many people are gonna help you. They see you get out and push it, you try to do it yourself, folks will stop and help you. So you gotta put some effort in. You can't just ask people to do stuff for you, then like, what do you do? So that part of seeing people who want something and then trying to make the environment better or help put them in a position that where they can shine. I like that. That's my favorite part. What else? Yes, sir.
Has your job ever put you in any type of danger?
Had put me in danger? Not in news, because I'm not a reporter. Reporters and photographers that are out in the field, they have more of an issue. There have been times when I field produced, and it's when I'm out in the field, it's like, yeah, that's probably not cool. I probably shouldn't be doing this. I'm trying to think. Danger of having a heart attack. Things don't go the way you want them to go, and you're just like, ah! But thankfully, either I blacked it out, but no real physical danger. Mentally, now this is important, because you're hearing stories and you're hearing about events before they even become stories, right? Things happen and those are events. And then stories are told about events, right? And so there are so many events that happen that we read about as media workers and as news workers that don't even get on the air, right? And this was tough in Chicago. So I say the danger was making sure I had to separate from work and hearing bad news and shootings and killings and a lot of gang violence at that time, still now. But we would get that information to the station, and if it was considered gang violence, we wouldn't report it. But we're still reading about all these horrible things that are happening. Like, we're getting the information, and then we're making the decision to not put it on the air. It's too late, it's already in my head. Part of why I'm doing this job is I have a decent imagination also. Now I'm imagining these things, or it's playing in my head, or crimes against children, especially when my children were young. They're 23 and 21 now. But when they were young, and then you see horrible things that, people do, so-called people do to children, that was tough. Like, I'm not gonna let my kids out the house, which is also not a way to live. But so from that, I would say maintaining my mental health when there's a barrage, when the majority of the information that you're getting is hardcore or negative information, trying to not push that back out and make sure your newscast isn't all negative. Who wants to hear that? Who wants to turn on and people say, oh, it's all bad news. Ideally, it isn't. It shouldn't be. But sometimes if I'm telling you the events of the day, it sounds really crazy. You know, so I would say that would be the biggest thing that I had to guard against for it not put myself in danger of losing my money. Someone tell you that it's too late, it's gone, but yeah. What other questions? Yes?
How does your job affect your mental health?
Well, yeah. But it also made me, it made me have to guard it, made me have to pay attention to my mental health. And then it also, and I'll just expand off of that. Also, when I'm in situations, I don't like being in the middle of crowds. I stand out on the perimeter. I'm looking at where the exits are, like damn near security, right? You know, I'll go in, and my friends will call me, we go to the club, or I can age younger, I'm tall, so I can see a lot, but all of that, because I'm like, bad things happen in crowds, I can think, I was at this janky circus or something, I don't know what it was, but when the kids were young, this is in Dayton, and something didn't feel right, and we're going up, and we got these free tickets, and it wasn't a big circus, it was circus in this hangar, but maybe the first clue is when you get up to the ticket booth and do the smoking a cigarette, like in front of kids, like blowing a cigarette and smoke on kids, you're like, really? And then get in there, and I was just like, now I'm an inspector in my head, this doesn't feel up to code, like something is wrong, like this is where bad things happen, and so having that feeling, and at one point, like a horse fell and slid into the crowd, I was like, yeah, we gotta go. We gotta go. Right, it was crazy. But just knowing those situations like now where people sit and watch, not that person. I'm not that person. So I don't run for my own fight, but I don't want to be involved in your business. So that's the thing I think that has made me always want to know where my exit is. I want to see who's doing what. I'm all in people's business when they're out. I'm not trying to listen, but I'm just watching body language and all of that. So I think that's how it's affected my life in terms of working in news. It's just hearing about all the things that can happen over years' time in different parts of the country. What else? Yes?
You work with any major celebrities?
Work with, I have, we can't talk about him now. I did do a shoot with Bill Cosby. I'm okay. It was pretty. But I met a number when I was in Chicago. On the morning show, we had celebs coming in and out, and so some of the people that, and I was looking at this the other day, looking at pictures of folks that we had on. We had Ice Cube. See now all these people, you're like, who's that? But yes, when you work in the industry, especially on a morning show, you're gonna run across people. I still know Angela Bassett. You know who that is? No? Okay, yeah. I'm gonna name people that y'all gonna be like, I don't know.
Yeah, have you guys seen Black Panther?
She's the bomb. Yeah, she's the queen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Worked with her and was at a party with her. It was like at my friend's house, and I was like, is that Angela Bassett? Yeah. And then ended up working together. My husband, my co-parent, my ex-husband now, but he's in film, and he's a cinematographer, and so he gets to work with more celebrities on a daily basis. And the cinematographer is the director of photography and head of the camera department, and responsible for the look and making sure the camera crews are doing what they want to do. So yeah, he's got more celebs. I'm trying to think of folks. And I was like, oh no, I just met him. I didn't work with him, but because he shot Coming to America 2, he's working on Force, the spinoff from Power, with Tommy.
Oh yeah, Tom Bell.
Yeah, he's working on that now. He and my kids are in the business too now. And so, well, the oldest one is, the youngest one's finishing college. So yeah, I'm trying to think of names that would mean something to you now. And I can't think of any, but yeah, meeting them. And sometimes it's not fun to meet the person that, you know, it's like, oh, I'm so excited to meet you. Oh, you're a weirdo, you know, and you're a weirdo in these 5 minutes. Can't you just not be weird in 5 minutes, you know? And so that's happened, and that's not been fun. But cool people that, yeah, I would say the biggest name, but it's now all trash. You know, it was like Bill Cosby, and every now and then when he would go back to the station, he would ask about him. He's like, where's Allison? How's she doing? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, got name recognition with a perv, man. It's not cool. But, but there's that. In terms of a name you would know now, I'd say Ice Cube and Queen Latifah and Morgan Freeman, those names. Is it Billy Baldwin who came in and he grew up in the living room? So there's little stories like that, but yeah. What else?
How did you get interested in this?
But again, it was, so I believe, okay, so I was raised by people who are very active in the community, very activists, and believe strongly in education and all of that. Somewhere in there, that transferred into my belief, that helped me help my belief that accurate information is one of the most powerful things you can give to someone. They can make their own decisions after that, but if I'm giving you information like facts, not lying, because you can't, who wants to make a decision off a lie? People do it all the time, sometimes they knowingly do it, but that's not how I roll. So that idea of, again, like I mentioned, I thought I wanted to be a reporter, and that was just because someone in my family mentioned it, like, yeah, I've done this, you should be a reporter. And then I got to school and was like, no, but what I liked is being able to give people information that they could live their lives from. And that's what kept me in the business. And making sure that certain stories or certain communities got covered, especially underserved communities, that tends to be Black and brown, poor communities overall, no matter the color or ethnicity. So that's what kept me in it, that whole idea of, oh, you need to know about this school over here doing this, or these kids doing that. You know, you're quick to cover when the kids are shooting each other. Let's go over there when they're working together and making something good happen in the community. So
I think that's about, I was
Is
gonna
that
wait
it?
for just a second for this class.
Okay.
Real quick, you guys.